What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another SkillCapped tier list, this time for patch 11.11. We have so many massive changes lined up, ranging from items to runes and many champion buffs and nerfs as well. Bruiser top lane players will be liking this patch a lot, as Bramble Vest will see nerfs. A couple broken picks in Leona and Morgana are being targeted, while trash can champs in Azir and Ryze receive some buffs. To break it all down, we brought together our challenger players and have analyzed the most recent data so you guys can have the best tier list possible. Bramble Vest has been such a staple rush item on so many tank top laners, so what are your thoughts on its being nerfed? Personally, I'm pretty excited because the item completely shut down so many champions and doesn't take any skill to use at all. On the flip side though, picking a tank top laner like Malphite and rushing Bramble Vest was the autofill special, so filled top laners will surely get exploited more now. Overall, it's a solid change in our books, but let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. Smash that subscribe button while you're down there to keep up with all the future content we have planned, and with that said, let's jump into it. So, as discussed in our question of the day, we'll start off by covering those Bramble Vest nerfs. Armor will be reduced from 35 down to 30, while Thorn's damage is nerfed as well, going from 3 plus 10% armor down to 3. So, the damage scaling off of armor is being completely removed, while the base armor is reduced by 5. By no means should these changes kill the item, and we think it will still be purchased frequently. However, bruisers will now see a slight indirect buff for 11.11. A pretty big nerf to Halo Blades is headed to live, with the cooldown nerfed from 8 up to 12 seconds. We're looking at Kai'Sa, Tristana, Varus, and Kalista as the biggest losers from this nerf, who will drop in priority for 11.11. Varus and Kalista won't be hurt as bad since lethal tempo is a fine alternative. However, Trist and Kai'Sa are just so good with HOB that this nerf will hurt them more. Xin Zhao and Shaco are a couple other HOB users who don't care too much about these nerfs, since they have alternative runes that are just as good. Overall, 8 to 12 seconds is a pretty huge nerf, so we expect the rune to be phased out on champs who have other options. Biscuit delivery has been way too OP for so long now, so Riot will be nerfing the sellback value from 30 down to 5 gold. This nerf shouldn't matter too much in the grand scheme of things if you're actually taking biscuits to help with sustain early on. What this nerf should do is prevent people from autopiloting biscuits every game. If you're in an easier matchup and don't need the sustain, then opting for an alternative would be the better choice now. An item we bet half of you guys haven't even purchased or maybe even heard of, called Wardstone, is being buffed. Wardstone was a new support item introduced in preseason that provides you with an extra control ward slot along with some health and ability haste. There were 2 upgrades to the item in previous patches, but Riot is simplifying that down to 1. The item costs 1100 gold, provides 150 health, 10 haste, and allows you to hold up to 3 control wards. When you reach level 13 and have completed the support quest, Watchful Wardstone will be automatically upgraded to Vigilant Wardstone, and you'll gain an extra 150 health, 15 haste, and have your ability power, haste, bonus attack damage, and bonus health increased by 12%. As a 3rd or 4th item, Wardstone will now be a great pickup and has already seen play on the likes of Zillion in previous patches. Another support item in Staff of Flowing Water will be buffed, as the AP granted from Rapid's passive is going from 20 scaling to 40 up to 25 scaling to 45. Often bought in combination with Staff is Moonstone Renewer, and it will be buffed too, as the heal and shield power per stack will be increased from 4 up to 6%. These 2 changes combined are really solid buffs to enchanters. However, we still think most will side with Shirelia's instead of Moonstone. Divine Sunderer is on the receiving end of a couple really nice buffs, as the Spellblade max health damage is increased from 10 to 12%. Healing will be increased as well, going from 50 up to 65% for melee and 30 up to 40% for ranged. Wukong is one pick we're really looking at as a big winner from these buffs, since he's a champ who has already seen great success with Divine before these changes. Some of the struggling top laners like Illaoi, Yorick, and Nasus will become indirectly stronger too. Another bruiser buff is in store, as the Carved Shred from Black Cleaver will be increased from 4% per stack with a max of 24 up to 4.5% per stack, maxed out at 27%. Wukong is going to be an absolute unit in 11.11, as his 2 core items have been buffed. There are so many other champs who build Black Cleaver like Riven, Urgot, and Kayn, who will also see a nice boost from this change as well. The power of Serpent's Fang on ranged users is being increased, going from 25 up to 35%. On someone like Varus, who benefits from lethality, this is a really great buff for him. Most of your crit ADCs would much rather build something like Infinity Edge 3rd, however, in games where the enemy comp is super heavy on the shields, Serpents as a 3rd item will become more valuable. Next up, we have a couple buffs to some tank items, starting with Warden's Mail. The rock solid damage mitigation passive will be increased from 0.5% max health up to 5 plus 0.35% max health. This is a nice mid-game buff to Warden's mail, as you won't have a ton of health by then, so the adding on a base component is great. Keep your eye on Frozen Heart for this patch, as it's seeing even more buffs. The attack speed slow will be increased from 15 up to 20%, while the rock solid damage mitigation is going from 0.5% max health up to 10 plus 0.35% max health. Nasus is really liking this patch, as Divine Sunderer and Frozen Heart are two of his most commonly bought core items. Randuin's will be buffed as well, but not to the level of Frozen Heart. The rock solid damage mitigation passive will be increased from 0.5% max health to 5 plus 0.35% max health. This is the exact same buff Warden's mail saw, and since Warden's is a component to Randuin's Omen, you're not actually receiving anything extra. To round out the item changes, Warmog's health requirement is buffed, going from 3k max health down to 1.1k bonus health. This means Warmogs becomes a much more valuable second item purchase, since the combination of Warmogs and a tank mythic would put you at 1150 bonus health. If you haven't tried out the Warmog's Ornn build yet, this is the patch to do so. Chemtank into Warmogs and Stoneplate is the Korean build being played in previous patches, and it becomes super broken now in 11.11. We could definitely see picks like Cho'Gath, Zac, Sion, and any other champs who scale off max health purchasing Warmogs more often. Now, with all those item changes covered, let's jump over to top lane and discuss how the meta will be shaping out. Urgot will have his WAD ratio reduced from 20 scaling to 36% down to 20 scaling to 34%. We've had Urgot in our OP tier for a while now, so the nerf is definitely justified, but we don't think it will be enough to push Urgot down just yet. Teemo will have his W cooldown reduced from 17 to 14 seconds. It's not a terrible buff by any means, however, our analysts don't see it being impactful enough to push Teemo up the tier list. As a result, Teemo will remain in A tier. The third top lane change goes to Singed, as his E cooldown will be reduced from 10 flat down to 10 scaling to 8 seconds. 2 seconds off for mid-game team fighting is a pretty sizable buff. Considering it's difficult for Singed to incorporate very much haste within his core build, the change is great. For now, Singed will remain in our A tier, however, we definitely see him on the fence between A and S. Alright, so we've made a few different changes to the top lane tier list, as Ornn will be joining Wukong, Shen, and Urgot in the OP tier. Like we mentioned, the Warmog's buffs are huge for Ornn, and the tipping point for us to bump him up. Gwen will be moving up into S tier, as the Riftmaker buffs from last patch have been treating her very well, combined with the fact we're finally seeing her true strength after weeks of optimization. Mord, Garen, and Urgot are the best low elo picks of the patch, while Set, Shen, and Gwen are the best bans. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank that you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com. We have professional courses by the top players, Smurf commentaries where a challenger player walks you through how to climb out of every rank from Iron to Diamond, and we upload tons of new exclusive guides to our website each week. In fact, we're so confident you'll improve using our system that if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund, so there's no risk. What are you waiting for? Check out SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. After no direct champion changes to junglers in 11.10, Riot is hitting them hard for this patch. Morgana will have her W monster bonus damage obliterated, going down from 185 to 155%. Pre-buff Morgana W a few patches ago was at 150%, so we're basically back to where we started. This nerf will shift Morgana out of our OP tier and down into S. The Blind Monk will see a partial revert on the E buff from a few patches back, as it's being increased from 8 up to 9 seconds. Definitely on the lighter side, at least compared to Morgana, and with how the jungle changes have positively impacted Lee from last patch, he's not going anywhere. S tier is where Lee Sin will be placed in 11.11. Elise will have her extended dueling strength and clear speed reduced, with her spider form auto attack AP ratio nerfed from 30 down to 20%. If this were a base damage nerf, we would be more concerned, but reducing the scaling power of an early game snowball champion isn't the end of the world. Elise will retain her spot in the OP tier for yet another patch. Rumble Jungle will see a pretty massive hit to his clear speed, as his passive on hit damage cap is reduced from 120 down to 80. This passive buff was one of the key factors to bringing Rumble back into the jungle meta, so now that it's nerfed, we'll see him fall back into mediocrity, dropping from A down into B tier. AP Shaco will be hit for 11.11, as his W damage per hit AP ratio is dropping from 10 down to 9%. E AP ratio will be reduced as well, going from 55 down to 50. Not a big deal considering AD Shaco is just as strong as AP Shaco, so he won't be moving anywhere on the tier list. Shaco will remain an OP pick once again. The classic base stat Graves buff is headed to live as his AD per level will be increased from 3 up to 4. Definitely a more impactful change than you may think, which will put Graves on the cusp of moving back into A tier. We still think he needs one more small adjustment before moving up, so we'll be placing Graves in B tier. To no one's surprise, Riot went a little too hard with the Hecarim Nerfs 2 patches back, so they've decided to slowly buff him back up. Q bonus AD ratio will be bumped from 70 up to 75%. E minimum bonus AD ratio is going from 50 to 55%, while the max bonus AD ratio is buffed from 100 up to 110%. These changes, combined with the Divine Sunderer buffs we covered earlier on, will be enough to move Hecarim out of C tier and into B. Heck will still be on the weaker side though compared to many other picks, so he's not someone we could recommend you put high priority on. This buff brings back Season 3 vibes, as Nautilus Jungle will be seeing some love. E damage to monsters will be increased by 200%. Predator Not Jungle is something to really keep on your radar, as his clear will be much stronger. The gank power from Nautilus Jungle is really insane, so if this buff can shore up his main weakness, Not could become a legitimate pick. We will place Not in B tier and continue to monitor him closely as the patch moves on. Finally, for the 9th and last jungle change of the patch, Master Yi will have his QAD ratio decreased from 100 down to 90%. To compensate though and shift Yi towards more of an on-hit build, Riot will buff his E base damage from 20 scaling to 60 up to 30 scaling to 70. Due to the Rageblade buffs from last patch, along with this nice change to E, the Kraken Slayer and Rageblade build will become the more optimal route. For the higher elos, these changes won't influence Yi's strength much at all, but lower ranks he'll be seeing more success. Yi will jump out of B tier and into A for 11.11. So, with all those jungle changes out of the way, let's break down our tier list. Moving into the OP tier will be Kha'Zix, sitting alongside Xin Zhao, Shaco, and Elise. Zac is being pushed up into S tier as the jungle changes from last patch, combined with the fact he was buffed for multiple patches in a row, has really helped him out. The 3 best low elo junglers are Amumu, Xin Zhao, and Fiddlesticks. Consider adding Shaco, Xin Zhao, or Elise to your ban list. Next up, for mid lane, we've got 3 champion changes to cover first, starting with Qiyana. W move speed will be decreased from 5 scaling to 13% down to 3 scaling to 11%. This nerf is targeted towards slowing down Qiyana in the higher elos, as she's been dominating the past while now. We don't rate Qiyana as highly for the lower ranks though, which is why she's been in our A tier for the past while. This nerf will put a dent into Qiyana's roaming strength and force us to drop her into B. Finally, something Azir mains can be happy about, as his Q mana cost is being reduced from 70 down to 55. 15 mana off is pretty significant, but you have to keep in mind Azir is in such a bad state that even a nice buff like this won't change much in the grand scheme of things. We will be shuffling Azir up from the garbage can into the C tier, but would still recommend to shy away from him if your main goal is to climb. Azir's dumpster fire buddy in Ryze is also seeing a buff after he was torn down even further by the phase rush nerfs last patch. Ryze will have his health per level increased from 98 up to 110. This equates to 150 extra health at level 13, which is the equivalent of 400 gold. Not a bad buff by any means, and like Azir, we will move Ryze out of the garbage can into C tier. As for the complete mid lane tier list, a much lighter patch, so nothing too drastic to report. Sylas, Rumble, and Zed will continue to dominate the meta. Diana, Malzahar, and Annie are the top 3 low elo picks, while we have Vlad, Sylas, and Zed as the most useful bans. AD carry is the role with the least amount of changes for 11.11, as Ezreal is the only champ seeing a buff. Health regen per level is going up from 0.55 to 0.65, while his base armor is bumped from 22 up to 24. A small increase in power to Ezreal's survivability that won't be significant enough to render any movement on the tier list. Ezreal will continue to lock down his spot in A tier for the time being. The most notable change to the marksman role this patch came from the Hail of Blade nerfs, as Kai'Sa will be dropping down from S to A tier. Same thing goes for Tristana, as she's been a big Hail of Blades abuser who will join Kai'Sa in A tier. We moved Vayne and Jhin into our OP tier during the mid-patch update tier list, and that's where they will stand at 11.11 as well. Picks like Varus and Kalista are also HOB users, but since they are perfectly fine running lethal tempo, we don't see the Hail of Blades nerfs affecting them as much, hence no movement on the tier list. Our 3 low elo picks of the patch are Veigar, MF, and Sivir, while banning out Vayne, Jinx, or Jhin is the way to go. It's about time we see a nerf to Leona, as her W damage will be reduced from 60 scaling to 200 down to 50 scaling to 190. 10 base at all ranks is a sizable hit, and will push Leona from OP down to S. Seraphine will be receiving a few buffs to her W, with the self-shield increased from 75 scaling to 150 up to 75 scaling to 225. W Ally Shield is buffed as well, going from 50 scaling to 100 up to 50 scaling to 150. If you factor in the changes to Moonstone and Staff of Flowing Water, Seraphine actually sees 4 different buffs for 11.11. Pretty huge overall, and will propel Seraphine back up into S tier. The last champion we need to discuss for 11.11 who will receive a shift in power is Senna. Frostfire Gauntlet will become less optimal of a purchase as the slow for ranged is being decreased while the slow cooldown is being increased. Senna's health per level will be increased from 75 to 82 to give her some more innate survivability. Passive range increase per 20 mist is going from 25 down to 20. Q will now scale with 160% lethality. E bonus move speed will have a 0.05 AP ratio tacked on, and lastly, Senna's ultimate receives a buff to the AP ratio going from 50 up to 70%. All changes in mind, Senna will remain a top tier support pick. The big change is to Senna's interaction with Frostfire. However, the offensive Kraken Slayer build is just as good. As a result, Senna will retain her spot as an OP support pick in 11.11. To break down our support tier list, we have Lulu and Senna as the 2 OP picks. Enchanter supports will all see an indirect rise due to the Staff of Flowing Water and Moonstone buffs. Zyra is having much more success after her buffs from last patch, so she'll be bumped up into the S tier. Our 3 low elo recommendations are Brand, Leona, and Zyra. The best bans we would advise are Leona, Thresh, and Lulu. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. So that's going to be all for the massive patch 11.11 tier list update. Don't forget to subscribe to stay in the loop with all the content we have planned. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you back soon.